The evening air was thick with humidity as Dr. Maya Thompson's BMW glided through the well-maintained streets of Oakwood Heights, one of Atlanta's most prestigious neighborhoods. The clock on her dashboard read 11:45 p.m., marking another late night after an emergency brain surgery that had saved a young mother's life. The street lights cast long shadows across her dark blue scrubs, still pristine despite the intense 6-hour operation she had just completed. Maya had only moved into this neighborhood 3 months ago, after finally finding the perfect colonial-style house that matched her dreams. At 35, she had worked relentlessly to reach this point in her life, becoming one of the youngest neurosurgeons at Atlanta General Hospital and the first black woman to lead the department's trauma unit. As she turned onto Maple Drive, where her house stood proudly among rows of similar upscale homes, she noticed the flash of headlights in her rearview mirror. A police cruiser had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, maintaining a steady distance behind her vehicle. Maya's hands instinctively tightened on the steering wheel, her mind racing through the familiar checklist. License and registration in the glove compartment, hospital ID clearly visible on her scrubs, and she was driving exactly at the speed limit. The police car continued to follow her for the next 3 blocks. Maya could feel her heart rate increasing, despite her attempts to remain calm. She had been in similar situations before, but something about tonight felt different. The cruiser's presence was more than just routine patrol. It felt deliberate, almost predatory. Through her rearview mirror, Maya caught glimpses of the officer behind the wheel, a middle-aged white man whose face was partially illuminated by the dim glow of his dashboard lights. He maintained a distance of about 2 car lengths, close enough to be intimidating, but not close enough to justify concern about tailgating. Maya's phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was a text from her colleague, Dr. Sarah Chen. "Patient's vitals are stable. Great work today." The message would have normally brought a smile to her face, but right now, her attention was focused entirely on the situation unfolding behind her. As she approached her driveway, Maya activated her turn signal well in advance, following every traffic rule to the letter. The moment she began to turn, the police cruiser's lights flashed to life, bathing the entire street in alternating red and blue. The sharp wail of the siren cut through the quiet neighborhood night. Maya's mind raced through her options. Her house was right there, less than 50 feet away, but she knew better than to pull into her driveway. Instead, she carefully pulled over to the curb, positioning her car under a streetlight where everything would be clearly visible. Her years of handling high-pressure situations in the operating room had taught her the importance of remaining calm and thinking strategically. With practiced movements, she turned off the engine but left the keys in the ignition. Her hands moved to the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel, clearly visible through the windshield. The interior light was already on, illuminating her face and professional attire. Next to her hospital ID badge was a small pin she always wore, a gift from her grandmother, featuring a simple but powerful message: "Dignity always." In her side mirror, Maya watched as the officer emerged from his vehicle, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. His nameplate caught the streetlight's glow: Officer J. Barrett. His deliberate, slow movements suggested this would not be a routine traffic stop. As Officer Barrett's footsteps grew closer, Maya took a deep breath and reached for her phone, discreetly pressing a combination of buttons that would activate her newly installed dashcam app, something her brother, a civil rights attorney, had insisted she install just last month. The small red recording light blinked to life, just as a flashlight beam swept across her side mirror. Maya knew the next few minutes would require every ounce of her professional composure and quick thinking. What she didn't know was that this encounter would soon become a turning point not just in her life, but in her entire community's fight for justice and equality. Officer Barrett's heavy boots crunched on the gravel as he approached Maya's car. His flashlight beam swept across her rear window before settling directly on her side mirror, creating a harsh glare that made it difficult for her to see his face. Maya kept her hands visible on the steering wheel, her hospital ID badge catching the light as she remained perfectly still. "License and registration," Barrett demanded, his tone sharp and unnecessarily aggressive. His southern drawl carried none of the warmth typically associated with the region. Maya noticed he hadn't started with the customary, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" This wasn't going to be a normal traffic stop. "Officer Barrett," Maya replied calmly, making sure to use his name to establish that she was paying attention to details. I'm going to reach for my registration in the glove compartment and my license in my purse on the back seat. Is that all right with you? Her voice remained steady, professional, the same tone she used when explaining complicated procedures to nervous patients. Barrett's response was a grunt and a curt nod. Maya moved slowly, narrating each action as she had been taught. I'm opening the glove compartment now, she said, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the officer's increasingly aggressive stance. As she reached for her purse in the back seat, Barrett's hand moved to his weapon. I don't see why someone like you would be in this neighborhood at this hour, Barrett commented, emphasizing someone like you in a way that made his meaning crystal clear. His flashlight beam now focused on Maya's face, a harsh light almost blinding her. Maya handed over her documents with steady hands. I live at 1542 Maple Drive, Officer Barrett. That's my house right there, she said, gesturing to the colonial-style home just a few yards away. I'm just returning from an emergency surgery at Atlanta General Hospital, where I'm the head of neurosurgery trauma. Barrett scoffed, examining her license with exaggerated skepticism. Right. And I'm the President of the United States. He walked back to his patrol car, Maya's documents in hand. Through her mirrors, she could see him speaking into his radio, likely running her information through the system. While waiting, Maya quietly activated her phone's live streaming feature, connecting to her social media account. She also sent a quick text to her brother, the civil rights attorney, being detained outside our house. Barrett. Recording. She knew the importance of documentation in situations like these. Minutes later, Barrett returned, his demeanor even more confrontational. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered, his hand again resting on his weapon. Maya's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. Officer Barrett, may I ask why? I provided my identification and proof of residence. I've broken no laws. She noticed his body camera was off, a detail her brother had taught her to look for. I said, step out of the vehicle. Barrett's voice rose, echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Lights began turning on in nearby houses, curious neighbors peering through their windows at the scene unfolding on their street. Maya made a crucial decision. Officer, I notice your body camera isn't activated. I'm going to reach for my phone to call your supervisor. I'm concerned about the nature of this stop. Her words were clear, loud enough to be picked up by her recording and heard by any neighbors who might be watching. Barrett's face reddened. You don't give the orders here, he snapped, but Maya could see uncertainty creeping into his expression. Her calm demeanor and professional approach were clearly not what he had expected. Just then, another set of headlights appeared on the street. A second patrol car pulled up, and Maya recognized the figure stepping out, Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, whom she had treated for a sports injury at the hospital's clinic last month. Barrett's posture stiffened as his supervisor approached, her expression stern as she took in the scene before her. The balance of power was about to shift, and everyone present could feel it. Maya maintained her composed demeanor, knowing that the next few moments would be crucial in determining how the situation would unfold. Sergeant Rodriguez's boots clicked against the pavement as she approached, her face illuminated by the mix of street lights and flashing patrol car lights. She took in the scene with experienced eyes. Maya's BMW pulled carefully to the curb, the professional woman's hands still visible on the steering wheel, and Officer Barrett's aggressive stance. What seems to be the situation here, Barrett? Rodriguez asked, her voice carrying the weight of authority. She positioned herself between Barrett and Maya's car, subtly changing the dynamics of the encounter. Suspicious vehicle in the area, Sarge. Subject claims to live here, but... Barrett began, but Rodriguez cut him off with a raised hand. Dr. Thompson? Rodriguez turned to Maya, recognition clear in her voice. Aren't you the surgeon who treated my knee last month at the clinic? Her tone was professional but carried a hint of warmth that contrasted sharply with Barrett's hostility. Maya nodded, maintaining her composed demeanor. Yes, Sergeant Rodriguez. I was just returning home from an emergency surgery at Atlanta General. Officer Barrett seemed concerned about my presence in the neighborhood. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed slightly as she turned back to Barrett. Did you run her license and registration? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. They came back clean, Barrett admitted reluctantly. But this neighborhood has had recent break-ins, and the hour. The hour is consistent with a trauma surgeon's schedule, Rodriguez interrupted. She glanced at Maya's dashboard camera, then at Barrett's unactivated body camera. Her expression hardened. Barrett, why isn't your body camera on? The question hung in the air like summer humidity. Barrett shifted uncomfortably, his hand finally moving away from his weapon. Battery died, he muttered, though everyone present knew this was unlikely. Dr. Thompson, Rodriguez addressed Maya directly. How long were you followed before being pulled over? 3 blocks, Sergeant, Maya replied, her voice steady. I have it recorded on my dashcam, along with the entire stop. I also noticed Officer Barrett's body camera was off, so I took the precaution of streaming this interaction live. Barrett's face flushed red at this revelation. Several neighbors had now emerged from their homes, standing on their front lawns to witness the scene. Among them was Judge Marcus Chen, who lived 2 doors down and served on the city's police oversight committee. Rodriguez processed this information quickly. Barrett, return to your vehicle and wait for me, she ordered. Once he was out of earshot, she turned back to Maya. Dr. Thompson, I'd apologize for this incident. Would you be willing to provide a formal statement about tonight's events? Maya reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, handing it to Rodriguez. I'll have my brother. He's a civil rights attorney. Send over the dash cam footage and live stream recording first thing in the morning. I believe the department's Internal Affairs Division will find them interesting. Rodriguez nodded gravely. I'll be filing my own report as well. This isn't the first complaint about Officer Barrett's behavior, but it might be the best documented. She paused, then added, You handled this situation expertly, Doctor. Years of keeping calm in the operating room helps, Maya replied, allowing herself a small smile. Though I have to admit, some surgeries are less stressful than this traffic stop. Judge Chen had made his way over to Maya's car. Dr. Thompson, he called out, I witnessed most of this interaction. Consider me a supporting witness if you need one. His presence added another layer of accountability to the situation. As Rodriguez returned to deal with Barrett, Maya finally let out a long breath. Her hands, still on the steering wheel, had remained steady throughout the encounter, but now they trembled slightly as the adrenaline began to wear off. She watched in her rearview mirror as Rodriguez read Barrett the riot act, the officer's shoulders slumping with each word. This incident would have consequences, not just for Barrett, but for the entire department. Maya's quick thinking and careful documentation had transformed what could have been another unreported case of profiling into something that couldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. The following morning, Maya sat in her home office, reviewing the footage from the previous night's encounter. Her brother, Marcus Thompson, stood behind her chair, watching the video play out on her large monitor. His usual cheerful expression had been replaced by focused determination as he took notes on his tablet. You did everything right, sis, Marcus said, pausing the video at a crucial moment when Barrett's hand had moved to his weapon. The documentation is perfect. Your dashcam caught his approach from multiple angles, and the live stream has already gotten over 50,000 views. Maya rubbed her tired eyes. She hadn't slept much after the incident, her mind replaying the events over and over. What's our next step? She asked, turning to face her brother. Despite her exhaustion, she was determined to see this through. I've already filed formal complaints with Internal Affairs and the Civilian Oversight Board, Marcus replied, pulling up the documents on his tablet. Judge Chen called this morning. He's personally reviewing the case, and his witness statement is damning. He saw Barrett following you before the stop. Maya's phone buzzed. Another message from Dr. Sarah Chen, Judge Chen's wife. The whole medical board is behind you, Maya. We've had other staff report similar incidents. The support was overwhelming, but Maya knew this was about more than just her experience. A knock at the door interrupted their discussion. Through the security camera feed, they could see Sergeant Rodriguez standing on the porch, holding a folder. Maya buzzed her in, noting that she was in civilian clothes rather than her uniform. Dr. Thompson, Rodriguez said as she entered the office, I hope I'm not interrupting. Her expression was serious but supportive. I've just come from a meeting with the chief. Officer Barrett has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Marcus stepped forward, introducing himself as Maya's attorney. Rodriguez nodded, having expected this. She placed the folder on Maya's desk. These are copies of previous complaints against Barrett. They were buried in the system, but with your documentation and Judge Chen's involvement, they've suddenly become very relevant. Maya opened the folder, her heart sinking as she read. 5 similar incidents in the past year alone, all involving minority professionals in upscale neighborhoods. None had been as well documented as her case. The department wants to handle this internally, Rodriguez continued, her tone suggesting she disagreed with this approach. They're offering a formal apology and Barrett's resignation. Marcus shook his head. Not good enough. This is systematic. The problem isn't just Barrett. It's a culture that protected him until he got caught on camera. He turned to Maya. What do you want to do, sis? Maya stood up, walking to her window. From here, she could see the spot where she'd been pulled over last night. A news van was parked there now, a reporter doing a live stand-up about the viral video of police harassment. We push for full transparency, Maya decided, turning back to face Rodriguez and Marcus. I want every complaint against Barrett reviewed. I want to know who buried them and why. And I want mandatory bias training for the entire force, not just a one-day seminar, but real, ongoing education. Rodriguez smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that. The chief won't like it, but with the media attention and Judge Chen's backing, they'll have to listen. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was from the hospital board. Emergency meeting called to discuss police interaction with medical staff. Your presence requested. The ripples from last night were spreading faster than she'd anticipated. One more thing, Rodriguez added, pulling out her personal phone. Other officers have started coming forward about Barrett's behavior. They stayed quiet before, but your stand is changing things. They want to help. Maya shared a look with her brother. This had become much bigger than one traffic stop. It was an opportunity for real change, and she was ready to see it through. Marcus nodded, understanding her determination. They had work to do. The hospital boardroom was packed tight with medical staff, administrators, and community leaders. Maya sat at the center of the long mahogany table, her posture perfect despite her exhaustion. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, illuminating the tense spaces around her. Chief of Police Richard Davidson stood at the front of the room, his usual commanding presence somewhat diminished by the situation. Behind him, a screen showed freeze frames from Maya's dash cam footage, including clear shots of Barrett's aggressive stance and his unactivated body camera. Dr. Thompson, Davidson began, his voice carefully measured. On behalf of the department, I want to extend our deepest apologies for Officer Barrett's conduct. He paused, glancing at the hospital board members. We're prepared to handle this matter internally. With all due respect, Chief, Maya interrupted, her voice firm but professional. That's not going to be sufficient. She opened her laptop, displaying a spreadsheet she and Marcus had prepared overnight. We documented 23 similar incidents in the past 18 months. 5 involved medical staff from this hospital alone. Dr. Patricia Williams, an elderly black pediatrician, spoke up from the end of the table. Last month, I was stopped 3 blocks from here, coming off a late shift. The officer said I didn't look like a doctor. I filed a complaint. Nothing happened. More stories began pouring out. A Latino cardiologist stopped while jogging in his own neighborhood. An Indian resident physician questioned at gunpoint in the hospital parking garage. Each incident had been reported. Each had been quietly dismissed. Judge Chen, who had joined the meeting as both a hospital board member and police oversight committee representative, cleared his throat. Chief Davidson, this pattern suggests a systemic issue that internal reviews have failed to address. Maya stood up, drawing all eyes to her. I have a proposal, she said, pulling up a new document on the screen. A joint task force between the hospital and police department. Mandatory cultural competency training for all officers, designed and led by medical professionals who understand both emergency response and community care. Dr. Sarah Chen, the hospital's chief of staff, nodded approvingly. Our staff could provide real-world scenarios, help officers understand why medical personnel often work unusual hours, travel through different neighborhoods. Sergeant Rodriguez, who had been quietly observing from the back, stepped forward. Many officers would welcome this training. We're tired of the bad actors making our jobs harder, destroying community trust. Chief Davidson shifted uncomfortably. The police union. We'll have to understand that change is inevitable, Judge Chen interrupted. Dr. Thompson's video has over 100,000 views now. National media is picking up the story. We can either lead this change or be forced into it. Maya pulled up another document. I've outlined a comprehensive program, 6 months of intensive training, followed by ongoing quarterly sessions, regular community feedback meetings, a new rapid response system for reporting and investigating incidents. She paused, making eye contact with Davidson, and complete transparency about past complaints. The room fell silent as Davidson considered his options. Finally, he nodded slowly. The department will cooperate fully, but Dr. Thompson will need your help to make this work. You'll have it, Maya replied, but I want Sergeant Rodriguez to lead the police side of the task force. She's demonstrated the kind of leadership we need. Rodriguez straightened, surprised but clearly pleased. Several officers in the room nodded their approval. As the meeting concluded, Maya felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Dr. Williams, tears in her eyes. You did what we've been trying to do for years, child. You made them listen. Maya smiled, remembering her grandmother's pin. Dignity always. She'd worn it to this meeting too, a reminder of why this fight mattered. Outside the boardroom, reporters were gathering in the hospital lobby. The story was growing, but now it wasn't just about one traffic stop or one bad officer. It was about changing a system, about building bridges between those who protected the community and those who healed it. Maya straightened her white coat, ready to face the cameras. This was just the beginning. 2 weeks after the incident, Maya stood before a packed city council meeting. The chamber buzzed with energy as community members, police officers, and medical professionals filled every available seat. News cameras lined the back wall, their red lights blinking steadily. Officer Barrett sat in the front row, his usual confidence replaced by nervous fidgeting. His police union representative sat beside him, looking equally uncomfortable. The internal affairs investigation had uncovered more than anyone expected, a pattern of discriminatory stops spanning Barrett's entire career. Dr. Thompson, Council President Angela Martinez began, you've reviewed the department's initial response to your complaint. What are your thoughts on their proposed changes? Maya approached the podium, her voice clear and steady. The proposals are a start, but they don't go far enough. She gestured to the thick folder in front of her. In the past 2 weeks, over 50 medical professionals have come forward with similar experiences. This isn't about one officer or one incident. Sergeant Rodriguez, now heading the newly formed Community Relations Task Force, stepped up to present their findings. We documented a clear pattern of bias in traffic stops across certain neighborhoods. The data shows that medical professionals of color are 3 times more likely to be stopped when wearing scrubs or hospital ID badges. The room erupted in murmurs. Barrett shifted in his seat as Rodriguez continued. Officer Barrett's stops were part of a larger problem, a culture that encouraged profiling under the guise of proactive policing. Maya watched as Barrett's union representative requested to speak. Officer Barrett is willing to accept responsibility for his actions, the representative announced. He's prepared to resign and... That's not enough, Maya interrupted, her voice firm but calm. Officer Barrett's resignation won't fix the system that protected him for years. We need comprehensive change. Judge Chen stood up from his council seat. I agree. The Civilian Oversight Committee has prepared a detailed reform proposal. He nodded to Maya. Dr. Thompson and her colleagues at Atlanta General have helped us understand how this affects our essential workers, doctors, nurses, emergency responders who serve our community at all hours. From the audience, Dr. Williams raised her hand. I've been practicing medicine in this city for 40 years, she said when recognized. Every black doctor I know has a story like Dr. Thompson's. The only difference is she had the presence of mind to record it. Maya opened her laptop, displaying a presentation on the chamber's screens. We developed a 3-part solution, she explained. First, mandatory body cameras that can't be deactivated during stops. Second, a civilian review board with real power to investigate complaints. Third, a partnership between the police department and medical community for cultural competency training. Several council members nodded approvingly. Even Barrett seemed to be listening intently now, his earlier defensiveness replaced by what looked like genuine reflection. Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward again. Several officers have volunteered to be part of the initial training program. They want to be part of the solution. Maya noticed Officer Chen, Sarah's brother, among the volunteers. He caught her eye and nodded respectfully. More officers were beginning to understand that real change would make their jobs easier, not harder. The council president called for a vote on the proposal. As hands raised around the chamber, Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about punishing one officer or winning one battle. It was about changing the system itself. Barrett's resignation would be announced the next day, but it would be a footnote to the larger story. The real headline would be the unanimous council approval of the most comprehensive police reform package in the city's history. As the meeting concluded, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from her grandmother. "You didn't just stand up for yourself, baby. You stood up for everyone who comes after you. Dignity always." Maya smiled, touching the pin on her lapel. Sometimes the best response to injustice wasn't just exposing it was transforming it into an opportunity for change. 6 months after the incident, Maya stood in the police academy's newly renovated training center. The room was filled with a mix of veteran officers and fresh recruits, all attending the first session of the mandatory cultural competency program. The walls displayed photos of community leaders, including medical professionals, teachers, and emergency responders of diverse backgrounds. Former Officer Barrett sat in the back row, no longer in uniform. After his resignation, he had surprised everyone by asking to join the Civilian Advisory Board as part of his own journey to confront and overcome his biases. His request had been met with skepticism at first, but Maya had supported giving him a chance to be part of the solution. "Good morning," Maya began, addressing the room. "I'm Dr. Maya Thompson, and 6 months ago, I was pulled over blocks from my home for what was called a routine check." She clicked her presentation remote, and her dashcam footage appeared on the screen. That incident could have ended very differently. Instead, it became a catalyst for change. Sergeant Rodriguez, now promoted to lieutenant, joined her at the front. "What you're about to learn isn't just about following new rules," she explained. "It's about understanding the community you serve. Every person you stop is someone's doctor, teacher, parent, or child." Dr. Williams shuffled to the podium, her years of experience commanding immediate respect. "I've been practicing medicine longer than many of you have been alive," she said with a gentle smile. "In all those years, I've learned that healing isn't just about treating symptoms, it's about addressing root causes. The same applies to community policing." The training session included role-playing scenarios, with medical professionals sharing their experiences and officers practicing appropriate responses. Maya watched as barriers began to break down, as understanding started to replace suspicion. During the lunch break, Barrett approached Maya in the hallway. "Dr. Thompson," he said, his voice carrying genuine remorse, "I know an apology isn't enough, but I want you to know, watching that footage of myself, seeing how I acted, it changed me." Maya studied him thoughtfully. "Change isn't just about feeling bad about the past, Mr. Barrett. It's about doing better in the future. Are you ready for that?" Barrett nodded, pulling out a journal. "I've been documenting my own biases, working with a therapist to understand where they came from. I want to share my story with other officers, help them recognize these patterns before they act on them." In the afternoon session, Maya introduced a new emergency response protocol developed in collaboration with the hospital. Officers learned about medical professionals' schedules, why they might be in different neighborhoods at unusual hours, and how to verify credentials properly. Judge Chen made a surprise appearance, bringing news that the program was already showing results. Complaints about racial profiling had dropped significantly in the precincts that had completed the training. More importantly, community trust was slowly being rebuilt. "This isn't just about avoiding bad publicity or lawsuits," Maya concluded as the session ended. "It's about creating a city where everyone feels safe and respected, whether they're wearing a police uniform, hospital scrubs, or ordinary clothes." As the officers filed out, many stopped to shake Maya's hand or share their own stories. One young rookie, a black woman, whispered, "Thank you for showing us it's possible to change things from within." Later that evening, Maya sat in her office at Atlanta General, reviewing feedback from the training session. Her grandmother's pin caught the light from her desk lamp. Dignity always. The words had taken on new meaning over the past 6 months. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lieutenant Rodriguez. Next week's session is fully booked. Officers from 3 neighboring counties want to join. You started something big, Doc. Maya smiled, remembering that tense night 6 months ago. Sometimes the worst moments could lead to the best changes, if you've had the courage to push for something better than just justice for yourself. 1 year had passed since that fateful night of the traffic stop. Maya stood at the podium in the Atlanta Convention Center, facing an audience of police officers, medical professionals, and community leaders from across the country. Her program had grown far beyond anything she had initially imagined. When I was pulled over that night, Maya began, her voice carrying through the packed hall, I never expected it would lead to this moment. Today, we're not just talking about one incident or one city. We're talking about a movement that's changing how law enforcement and medical professionals work together nationwide. In the front row, her grandmother sat proudly, the creator of the Dignity Always pin that had become the symbol of their training program. Next to her sat Lieutenant Rodriguez, recently nominated to become the city's first Latina police chief. Former Officer Barrett, now a full-time speaker on police reform, sat with them, his own journey of transformation serving as a powerful example of change. In the past year, Maya continued, displaying statistics on the giant screen behind her. Emergency room incidents involving law enforcement have decreased by 60%. Traffic stops of medical personnel have dropped by 75%. But more importantly, community trust scores have reached their highest levels in 20 years. Dr. Williams, using a walker but still commanding respect, joined Maya at the podium. 15 other cities have adopted our program, she announced. When we started this, some people said we were asking for too much change too quickly. But look around this room. Change is happening because people on both sides wanted it to happen. The presentation included video testimonials from officers and medical professionals across the country. Each story highlighted how better understanding had led to better outcomes. A doctor in Chicago who helped police understand why emergency medical workers sometimes broke traffic laws. A police officer in Houston who created a special liaison unit for hospitals. Maya clicked to her next slide, revealing the cover of Time magazine. The photo showed her standing between a line of police officers and a line of medical professionals, all wearing Dignity Always pins. The headline read, "The traffic stop that changed American policing." But our work isn't finished, Maya emphasized. Today, we're launching the National Medical Law Enforcement Alliance. This organization will help other cities implement similar programs, provide resources for training, and collect data to continue improving our methods. Judge Chen, now heading the National Police Oversight Committee, stepped up to announce the next phase. Congress has approved funding to implement this program in 50 more cities next year, he revealed, drawing applause from the audience. Dr. Thompson's model will become the national standard for police training. After the presentation, Maya found herself surrounded by people wanting to share their stories. A young black medical student told her about driving home from late-night study sessions without fear. A veteran police officer described how the training had helped him become a better mentor to new recruits. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with an unexpected guest, Officer Chen, now a sergeant himself, who had just been appointed to lead the training program in Los Angeles. "Your courage changed everything, Dr. Thompson," he said. "You showed us there was a better way." Later that evening, Maya returned to her familiar parking spot outside Atlanta General. The same street where she had been pulled over a year ago now had a small plaque commemorating the incident that sparked nationwide change. As she got out of her car, she noticed a young black female resident doctor walking confidently to her own vehicle. The resident spotted Maya and smiled. "Dr. Thompson, I just finished my first solo surgery." She touched the Dignity Always pin on her white coat. "Thanks to you, I never worry about driving home late. You changed things for all of us." Maya watched the young doctor drive away, remembering her own fear that night a year ago. Sometimes the biggest changes started with one person refusing to accept injustice, and then showing others how to be part of the solution.